be proactive if you think you're suffering unlawful conduct at work, right? Just, I can't highlight it enough because of the fact that you always see it being reactionary. I'm fired. What can I do now, right? Be proactive about it to protect yourself.
Hey everyone, it's Amy Lynn Durham, and you're listening to Create Magic at Work. Create Magic at Work is on a mission to equip senior leaders with tools they need to be a true quantum leader and actually understand what that means. Improve employee engagement, retain top talent, and transform your workplace culture to have less drama and stress. So let's start making magic. Hey everyone, welcome back to Create Magic at Work. Today, I have a very interesting guest that I'm excited to bring to you. His name is Taylor Crabill. And let me tell you a little bit about Taylor. Taylor is deeply committed and has committed his career to advocating for employees who have faced discrimination, retaliation, sexual harassment, sexual assault, and wage issues in the workplace. Over the years, Taylor has had the privilege of representing clients against some of the largest and most formidable companies and law firms in the world. Taylor is here to help continue the fight for employees, and he feels like this is his, I'll say, current life passion. Taylor, welcome to Create Magic at Work.
Thanks, Amy. Glad to be here.
So to be clear, you are a lawyer for employee law. Is that what we would call you?
Yeah, that's fair. I'm an attorney who practices primarily, almost exclusively, employment law, and I'm on the side of the employees, right? There are attorneys that will represent employers, also attorneys that represent employees. Usually it's one or the other, right? Sometimes you might be able to represent both, but I practice on the employee side.
Well, thank you for being here. Your admin reached out and I was like, this is super interesting. We haven't had a guest on Create Magic at Work, particularly an attorney. So I can't wait to hear what you have to share to all of the listeners. And thank you for donating your time here today. So let's start off with what led you to doing this work?
Sure. So try to keep it short. So my dad is a lawyer, practices a very different area of law, does trust in the states. And so that was like my first introduction to the legal field. Then post-college, I got into being a paralegal. And it was a paralegal for an employment law firm and one that also represented employees. So I got great exposure to the legal industry, understanding what it would be like to be an attorney, but also to employment law more specifically. And so I really enjoyed the work, helping people in difficult situations. So I did that for 2 years, went to law school, tried a bunch of different things, kept coming back to employment law. And that's where I've decided to plant my flag and pursue my career.
Tell me, what are some of the common signs of workplace issues that you see with maybe people reaching out to you for help, if you can?
Yeah, so and you mean like common signs like, hey, I think something might be going on here. There might be something unlawful. Yeah. So it depends, I guess, on the various situations, but there are some common repeating sort of signs, right? And it's important for people to sort of trust that gut feeling because more often than not, you're right, So let's take, for example, a woman who just became pregnant and is now far enough along that she's decided to, it's time to tell people at work, disclose it to my employer, right? Prior to announcing the pregnancy, she was on all the top jobs. She was a top performer. But then after she makes the announcement, all of a sudden her performance isn't as good, right? She starts to get micromanaged. Maybe there's increased criticism. Maybe she's not getting the same opportunities that she had. She gets taken off, some high value clients that she had been working on for a long time, right? So a change in how you're being treated based on a circumstance like a pregnancy, right? Or if you were to suffer some sort of disability that you didn't have before, so something changed, right? Another way to kind of pick up on discrimination in the workplace is where you're being treated differently than people outside of your class, right? If you are a minority, minority person, minority background, and you notice you're being treated differently than people outside of your group, right? I currently represent a Black man in discrimination and retaliation case against the ACLU. The allegations are that he was, treated differently than his non-Black employees, right? His non-Black coworkers. So, again, that people outside of your group being given more opportunities than you, maybe there's a little more slack with them, right? They might make a similar mistake to you, but they're not criticized or punished as harshly or at all. Those are the sort of things to pick up on in connection with discrimination.
Interesting. So many things to kind of chew on here. I'm thinking from a broader lens. I was briefly the president of our women's employee resource group in my former career. And one of our initiatives was really to help as many women as possible move into leadership roles. And I'm just thinking of the statistic overall that there isn't as many women as men in leadership roles. And there's all kinds of reasons that are thrown out in regards to that. Yeah, it's just kind of interesting how your work kind of pinpoints each individual that may need help. And maybe that can help the collective overall. And these are just my thoughts coming up here. The other thing is spiritual intelligence is a huge topic with Create Magic at Work. And it's sort of the new wave, I think, in the workplace is spirituality. The 21 skills of SQ are a faith neutral system. And I get asked all the time, do you get pushback for this? How can you talk about this in the workplace? Because traditionally HR departments or companies, they don't want to discuss religion at all because they're afraid of being sued point blank, right? Of some sort of way or another. I just have to ask because it's Create Magic and Work, and we talk about this all the time from a faith neutral lens. What are your thoughts on that? Because I'll share mine. I'd love to hear yours, but I truly feel like if we're not bringing our full selves to work, and that includes our spirituality, we're leaving a part of ourselves at home, and then we can't tap into innovation or creativity or all of these other things, or people don't see who you truly are. What's your take on all of that as the attorney here?
Yeah, I think that's certainly an interesting way to look at things, and I can kind of understand how it would play into the context of maybe the legal aspects, right? In terms of like we were just talking about suffering discrimination or some other form of unlawful conduct at work, right? If you're experiencing something like that, well, I guess let's start from the legal perspective, right? The law provides for the recovery of emotional distress damages in these unlawful discrimination, retaliation cases, right? There's an inherent understanding that if you are discriminated against because you're a Black person, because you're a woman, because you suffer from a disability, that you are going to suffer some sort of emotional distress, right? And there can be different levels of emotional distress, and the law provides for different monetary recovery based on that. But there's the human aspect of it as well, right? There is certainly, as you're going through that, it may be hard to find the motivation to keep going. Maybe you'll want to remove yourself from the situation, right? Maybe start looking for a new job rather than, taking some sort of other action just to remove yourself from the situation rather than trying to address it. So I could certainly see if you're experiencing this kind of unlawful negative conduct in connection with the workplace and perhaps discrimination, it could certainly bring down those levels, right? The levels of maybe energy and motivation that you bring to it. And I think that plays into the spiritual aspect as well, right? That's going to drive down that sort of spiritual part of it that you might rely on to do your best work.
Okay, I'm going to ask you a question from the employer point of view. I know you represent the employees, but no offense here, but ultimately, I would think that we would want to put you out of business, right? That these things are eradicated in the workplace, that everything is beautiful and peaceful and everybody is operating from wisdom and compassion, right? My ideal here. So, from an employer perspective, what are some proactive steps that employers can take to prevent discrimination and retaliation claims?
Yeah, absolutely. And so, employers are going to want to have certain systems and practices in place. Everyone knows HR being a dedicated, workforce to helping deal with these issues. If you're a larger company, maybe you have in-house counsel who has, dealt with these issues before, can really put in the procedures for, hey, here's how you make a complaint. This is who you need to make a complaint to. This is how your complaint will be addressed, right? We will need to interview you. We will, look at whatever evidence that you have to determine what's going on here. Are your accusations, are your claims, meritorious? Do they have merit? Is there another side to the story that we're not getting? Really doing your due diligence to understand what's going on and then what could be the best course of action to address it, right? So whether you're a larger employer or even a smaller employer, having those sort of systems and practices in places to address these go a long way to helping you, understand what to do.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, and I see it a lot with I worked for some really large companies, and we had a lot of these systems in place, and I was on the senior leadership side where, I've been involved in many, HR documentation, all of the things, investigation, all of those things. I often see in small businesses they wait until something arises before they have a system in place, and that really can hurt everyone involved trying to scramble and handle, whatever comes up. So great tips there. On the employee-centered side, what are some things employees should look out for in the workplace? Because I'm just thinking of some past interviews I've recently done. It just happened organically. We just did one on workplace abuse and how to spot the signs. I just did another one with one of my colleagues, Dr. Marie Gervais, on career trauma. Like a lifelong thing that she has an amazing TED talk on. And so I sometimes think we aren't aware of the low grade stress that we might be involved in, or we might think, yeah, this is just the way work is, and kind of brush things off. And then all of a sudden, 30 years later, we're hitting retirement and we have long-standing career trauma, to reference that past conversation. So, what are some signs that employees and people should look out for that may be under the umbrella of discrimination or retaliation or the different things that you deal with?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a really good point. And one of the things that I want to highlight that you said is, this is just how the job is, right? Oftentimes, almost all the time in employment law, on the employee side, the employee is reactionary, right? The employee has been demoted, the employee has been fired, suffered some other, adverse action, and now is reaching out to an employment attorney to say, hey, what can I do? The better approach would be to be proactive about it, right? So when you do get that gut feeling, when you do think like, hey, something has changed here, right? I told, ABC supervisor that I'm, pregnant now and I'm noticing this change, maybe it works itself out and maybe, things go back to the way they were, but trust your gut that there might be something going on there. And if you need to reach out for your professional advice, you can certainly do that. I speak to tons of potential clients all the time while they're still employed and, trying to understand what they could do. And one of the things is if you feel you're being discriminated against, if you are noticing this change, is to make a complaint, a written complaint, right? Hey, supervisor, hi, HR, hello, person at the company that can do something about this. I feel that I'm being discriminated against because I'm pregnant. Here are the reasons why, right? What can be done to address this situation? Having done that, you now likely have engaged in what's called a protected activity. So if you are fired, if you're demoted, if you suffer some other adverse action, you potentially have other protections under the law. Whereas if you don't make that sort of complaint, now you're terminated, and now you're trying to complain about, oh, I thought I was being discriminated against. Well, the employer didn't know that before, so you're probably missing out on a retaliation claim. So I would say being proactive and trusting your gut is very important. And a big part of it is, we are human. Everyone makes mistakes. You're not going to do your job perfectly. So if you feel like you're getting this increased criticism, maybe you feel like, oh, maybe this is warranted, or, I'm just gonna work harder to compensate for what's happening. But really, really trust your gut there. And at the very least, reach out to somebody, right? Speak to an employment attorney. They should be giving you a free consultation to hear you out and give you, some understanding of the law. And you could do it that way you will, right? Just because you're reaching out to an attorney doesn't mean you necessarily need to continue to pursue something.
All right, it's time for a fun, playful, quick break. And it's time for you to discover your spiritual intelligence at work. So over here at Create Magic at Work, we are not just a great podcast. We are an executive coaching firm, a team dedicated to helping leaders like you create healthier, more fulfilling workplaces. Whether it's through private coaching, transformative workshops, or impactful keynotes, we're here to help support your journey to have less drama and stress and more magical moments in your life. So have a little fun. Take our quick quiz in the show notes and see where you stand. Discover your spiritual intelligence at work. Click on the link in the show notes and reach out to us for support if you need it. Sending magic to you. Some of the things that I've seen that I feel need some systemic change that can contribute to some of these issues arising are, let's use your example of a woman that is pregnant in the workplace and is about to go on maternity leave, or that you've been referencing that type of example. What I've noticed in my experience is there isn't a great system in place to support that. So no judgment here, right? But that individual leaves and they have this huge workload that everyone else might have to take part in. And so that causes feelings of resentment, or that person, just if you're held to financial goals, maybe that person is still quote unquote on the payroll, and then you're held to meeting some sort of financial goal while carrying that. And so I think a lot of this can be helped with tweaking some of the systems that we work in as well. One of the really cool things that I saw that I was like, oh my gosh, I wish I would have had this in like the 90s as a new district manager, or the early, whatever, was I was starting to see it come up in the workplace. I just want to share this for the listeners, is a parental leave coach. So companies are hiring these coaches to come in and bridge that gap. And so the person that goes on leave doesn't feel so isolated and left out in the cold. And then when they come back, they don't feel like they've completely been lost in the shuffle. And then the people that are still there, there's just very clear boundaries. There's a very clear way of how everyone's treated. And that parental leave coach will help navigate that for everyone. And I just love hearing solutions like that help everybody feel valued and seen, and it helps with the change. I just want to bring that up again. It's a old episode that we did here that I was like, oh my gosh, there's a parental leave coach. How cool is that? So what else could we do, right, in the workplace that could be similar to that? Like, I share that story as a creative jumping off point for everyone listening.
Just to comment, because I think that's very interesting. A parental leave coach or someone in that sort of position, it could, be a very valuable person. And on top of that, we were talking about policies, procedures, practices before, having those tailored to that situation, right? It's undeniable that you're going to deal with pregnant women in the workplace. So let's prepare to make sure that we have a system in place to get that done, X months, weeks before the due date before the woman has to go out on maternity leave, you have, another employee come in to learn what's going on with the client, to be able to manage the client until she's able to return to work, right? Having that sort of support in place. And then also, having the culture of, hey, we're an employer and this is a reality of life. And then, you're going to have coworkers that need to take these sort of leave. So, having that from a policy and perspective standpoint, but also from a cultural standpoint, I think could be a good way to mitigate some of those things that you were talking about.
Yeah, I love that. I just want to encourage this, like, let's open up our thought patterns here and try to reshape the system that we're working in so it works for everyone. On another note, you already mentioned starting the documentation process. If someone feels like, hey, something doesn't feel right, let me get a consultation with someone like you, or let me maybe reach out and start the documentation process and say, hey, I'm experiencing this. I just want to let someone know. Is there any other steps that someone should take before contacting an attorney?
You could go about that process on your own, right? You could, if you did some of your research on your own, or maybe you have some basic knowledge, that, if I make a complaint, it could be what's a protected activity, and I could have retaliation claims if they do something, but wording matters, right? Really reaching out as soon as possible and then having an expert help you craft that, right? I've crafted many, many, many sorts of emails, help the person with their drafts to the employer about these sort of issues that are going on in the workplace, right? There's a way that you're going to want to say things. A common example is if someone makes a complaint and they're like, hey, Jim, my supervisor, we're not getting along. He's, yelling at me, he's not treating me well, we're just not getting along. But there's nothing in there about the fact that I need an accommodation because I'm disabled now. And I've noticed that change since then. Or, back to the pregnancy example, I've noticed this change since I've been pregnant, right? If there's no connection to a protected characteristic, it's possible that your written complaint, even though it's in writing and even though you're sending it to the right people, might not count as a protected activity under the law, and you lose those protections. So I guess you could, of course, try to navigate the situation on your own, but I think it's probably unlikely that you'll be maximizing your protection under the law. And like I said before, I do it all the time. I will help people, even if they're not my clients, because they could be clients right down the road. And so if I could help you put together what most likely is going to be a protected activity under the law, I will do that. And I've done that, and I've never heard from people again. And I hope that their situations had worked out. But the attorney you're reaching out to should, if they have the bandwidth, if, whatever they have going on in their practice, they should be able to help you navigate those situations.
If you had two things that you really wanted everyone listening to walk away with, two key tips, what would they be?
Number one is be proactive if you think you're suffering unlawful conduct at work, right? I can't highlight it enough because of the fact that you always see it being reactionary. I'm fired. What can I do now? Right? Be proactive about it to protect yourself. Right. Another thing is to understand that, the employer has its own interests, right? There are fantastic HR employees that do great work, help the company, help employees in many different instances, but understanding that you maybe need someone that is on your side, right? At the end of the day, the HR employee is employed by the company and might have the best intentions in the world, but, we all suffer from implicit biases, right? And so if you have an advocate on your side as well, at least you can feel like you're getting, the answers that best serve you and the sort of steps that you can take to best protect yourself.
Yeah, really good. Really interesting conversation today for Create Magic at Work.
Yeah, excellent. I love it.
Yeah. One more question before we dive into pulling a card for everybody. What would your advice be to employers about balancing accountability and fairness in regards to disciplinary action to minimize liability? Because there are people that aren't doing their job. Everything's anonymous, but I did have one client, I won't say the name, they were struggling with someone on their team, and the person straight up told them, "I'm lazy and I don't want to do this." And then they were hearing from superiors, which happens a lot in the workplace, "Hey, coach that person out," quote unquote, coach that person out, right? If that employee is struggling with their team member, how do they balance accountability and fairness with and minimize the liability for themselves?
Absolutely. I mean, in reality, right? And not everyone that comes forward with a complaint of discrimination or, complaint in general, not all of them are meritorious, right? Not every case that is filed ends up being meritorious, right? There are cases that are filed that maybe shouldn't have been filed, right? That's just the reality of the legal industry. So what we were talking about before, having those policies and practices in place to address these things, right? Having objective, stated, known performance criteria so that someone could be judged. You didn't hit XYZ quota, we got to let you go, right? I mean, having those sort of objective factors in place could certainly be, a starting point. Making sure that you're doing that sort of thorough investigation to learn all the facts about the situation, have everything so that you can make an informed decision, right? I hear from people on the employer side, maybe even in-house counsel, dealing with these sort of cases all the time. And, maybe the person's experience in a company is that a lot of these just don't have merit, right? But maybe one, two, maybe a couple of them do. And so even if your typical experience is, oh, okay, this is kind of another one of these complaints, I'll do what I need to do. Like take all of them seriously and make sure that you're doing your due diligence.
I like that. I like taking all of them seriously and approaching them with curiosity and non-judgment, because there are people that really suffer from workplace bullying and really suffer from discrimination and different things like that. And then, like you said, there are some that might not be real claims. And so if someone's in a leadership position that working with these, approaching every single one from a space of curiosity and non-judgment, I think is the best way to approach it. And I always coach the leaders that, like, for in that story I shared, it's you be the best leader you can be, and the chips are gonna fall where they fall. If your company has a proper system in place and the expectations are there, then you don't have to do anything but be the best leader you can be, have the most effective communication. And if the job isn't the right job for the person, that's going to show itself. And really, it's a gift for the person too, because it'll redirect them to somewhere that might be better for them. Now, everyone listening, I've had on the workplace bullying episode and on the career trauma, I had people personally reach out to me saying, "Thank you so much. I've been experiencing this, and I just feel so seen that you had this episode and that you're covering these topics." So it's real, and people are experiencing real pain in the workplace. And so I think at this point, this is a really good time to pull a card and send a message for everybody. And then once we do that, we'll share if somebody is experiencing something and maybe they feel like they need to talk to you, we'll share how they can get in touch with you. So I'm using the Create Magic at Work journal prompt card deck, and I have it on an app called Deckable that you can download on your phone. It's a virtual card deck. I have the real deck, but it's cool because you can just have up to 100 card decks in your pocket, leadership, oracle, everything. So I'm going to scroll through the deck on my phone so you can see I can
Yeah,
scroll
very
through,
neat.
and I'm going to pick a card. Yeah, it's cool. Oh my gosh. Yay. This is such a cool one we got. I'll read it to you. But we got courage.
Oh, okay, great.
What a great theme for today. So, courage is the card. And the affirmation is I am open to adventure and I leave space for the unimaginable to appear in my life. There's two coaching questions on here surrounding courage, but I feel like this courage theme came up to speak to anyone that might feel like they're being marginalized or might feel like something's going on. And the message is have courage. And just to be like pretty straightforward there, and the art piece on the card is a butterfly with its wing kind of coming out of the cocoon. So the coaching questions on here, I'm going to throw them out. And Taylor, I'm going to ask you, if someone is feeling afraid, how can they muster up the courage to step forward and speak if something is going on with them at work?
Yeah, absolutely. It's such like a perfect card for what we're discussing. So yeah, I guess to kind of preface it, a lot of times, I would say probably most of the time, and there are statistics on them, and I haven't looked at them recently, but probably a majority of the time, people are coming forward, even though they're experiencing maybe discrimination, other unlawful conduct in the workplace, for perhaps legitimate reasons, right? Want to avoid conflicts, don't either understand or want to deal with the sort of legal process. But you can have a conversation. I've had conversations with potential clients and they decided not to move forward, but at least they got the full understanding. These are my rights. These are the potential risks. These are the potential rewards, right? For the law provides for recovery, and this is the way the legal system works, money recovery in most instances to compensate you for what you had to deal with, right? And that can sometimes be meaningful for people in their lives and allow them to advance themselves in some way or put this situation behind them. So when you think of courage in terms of if I contact a lawyer, I have to file a lawsuit. No, the courage is pick up the phone, give a call, and let me just hear what my options are. And throughout the process, right, I'm an advocate. The client at the end of the day makes the decisions. You want to file a lawsuit? Okay, I'll help you file a lawsuit. You want to settle the case? I will give you my advice. I will let you know whether I think it's a fair settlement based on, the strength of your claims, what potential damages you could recover. But at the end of the day, it's your decision, right? So having the courage to inform yourself, I think is very important. And then kind of drawing on the image, which I think is also very interesting, is the cocoon coming out into the butterfly. Oftentimes when a client is able to get a resolution, right? Most of the time it's a settlement. Almost 97% of civil cases resolve at some point. Very few actually make it to trial. So the chances that you're sitting in a courtroom on a witness stand, very, very small in a civil case. But when a client's able to reach a settlement, you see a sort of weight lifted and a change and a real acceptance that I can now put this very difficult part of my life behind me. I feel that maybe I've achieved some sort of justice in the recovery. I feel validated in coming forward and being recognized for what I had to go through, and then being able to move on with the many other exciting things in that person's life.
Yeah, really good closure, feeling seen and heard, all of those things. Really good. I feel like that came up because someone might be listening. I don't know. I just have to call out that intuition and that energy that I feel. And yeah, you just have to have the courage to have a conversation with someone like Taylor that will help you feel heard and kind of decide which direction you want to take. So, Taylor, how can people reach out to you if they want to connect with you?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can give us a call. Our phone number is 727-335-1030. We practice primarily out of New York and Florida, but we will handle cases across the country if needed. You can also shoot us an email. You can directly to my email. It's tcrabill, so TCRABILL at crabillawfirm.com. Or you could visit our website, crabill.lawfirm.com, and you can fill out a little questionnaire, your name, contact information, and a brief description of what you're experiencing, and we'll reach out to you.
Amazing. Yeah, and LinkedIn, you're on LinkedIn. I'm your new connection on LinkedIn, newer. And we'll put all of those links in the show notes so everyone can just have easy access to that. So, Taylor, thank you so much for being a guest on Create Magic at Work, and thank you for shining some light on this topic. I feel like we could do many episodes on this. So, thank you for showing up and sharing your wisdom with everybody.
Thank you so much, and appreciate you having me on.
I want to thank each and every one of you for coming back every week to listen to a new episode of Create Magic at Work and really helping to support and advocate for healthy leaders, workplaces, and lives for all of us. If you want any information on how to connect with me, click on the link in the show notes. You'll get access to all of the social media links for Create Magic at Work. Stay following along for more amazing episodes where we help you improve productivity and profitability in the workplace and decrease stress. Sending magic to everyone, and see you next time.